I want to start by telling a story on Elder Taylor and Elder Taylor. They were assistants at the same time, and so I had the famous Taylor and Taylor as my assistants, and we're traveling up in the Pyrenees, and we get in some beautiful country. I mean, it's really gorgeous, and it just looks like the scene out of The Sound of Music. And all of a sudden, here's a couple of Taylors and Taylors, and they're jumping out of the car, and they're running down this field with The Sound of Music. Like a couple of crazy missionaries. Em plau tinc esta oportunitat de parlar-vos uns minuts. Vull dir-vos que són uns joves molt especial i les aprecio bastant.
Sure.
That's all I know. That's it. That's it. Don't ask for more. My dear friends and guests, you know, over the waning years in my life, I've just wanted to, or I have asked the Lord over and over many times, how do I use some different verbiage to tell you, to tell thee how grateful I am. Now here I am again, trying to figure out some ways to thank him and to thank you for this moment. You think this is not important in this old man's life? Yes, it is. Very. But I want you to know, I don't think it's very usual missionary thing. How can it be unusual when there's a strange little old man walking around in the premise, 96 years old? How can it be usual? Another thing that I think about tonight, and that is that you are not. This is not a normal situation either as far as you're concerned. You were called to the most difficult Spanish-speaking mission in the planet Earth, and they were the most educated, the most cultured, the most wealthy people, Spanish-speaking people that we have on Earth. And I hate to admit it, but it's largely due to the Catalans. Love those Catalans. They'll have that mission or that temple just humming in no time, won't they? And they'll do it well too. I do believe that they will do it so very well. Well, I don't think that this environment that I just talked to you about the wealthiest and the most cultured is the most ideal environment for missionary work, by the way. But while we were on our mission, the brethren taught us a principle that I thought was kind of surprising. But they said, well, you know, baptisms are not really everything. The more important part of the missionary work is the sanctification of the mission, of the missionaries. And then I think about you, what you have done with your lives. What a bunch of sanctification that has taken place, how much good you have done in the world, and how much good there you have yet to do. My goodness. Well, I hope I have something that is a little interesting to you tonight. Something that's a little interesting to my guests who don't really know me. I did want to comment to you that as I grew up in the colonies in Old Mexico, we didn't really think about opening up the letter to see where we were going. No, we just knew where we were going. And so I had 7 neat little friends that we were little tykes in primary, and we were in the Aaronic priesthood and school, graduated from high school, and the four of us of the eight take a plane to our mission to Mexico City, and in a few weeks after that, the other 8 come. Now, where can you duplicate that? Just to ask you the question, where can you duplicate that situation where 8 missionaries, 8 people who grow up together, spend all of their youth together, and they are in the same mission at the same time? That's it. I just throw that in for what that for what that's worth. Maybe not worth that much. Anyway, my sweet Della that many of you grow to love, and I don't wonder how, because she was probably the most wonderful helpmeet, and it didn't matter what I decided to do. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if I took her deer hunting. She went, and she could sit a horse longer than my boys could sit a horse, for gosh sake. She was a helpmeet, and you who were in the mission field with her realized just what a job she did. Well, we were later called to the MTC in Guatemala, and oh my gosh, all the training and the wonderful things that she filled, the role that she filled there was amazing. But anyway, we met in Mexico City, and the mission president, I'd been serving as it was a little different setup in those days, but instead of assistants, they had a man who was living in the country like a bishop, so to speak, and had a job, and he was one of the counselors. And then one of the young men was the other counselor, and I was serving as a counselor to the mission president, and I had been in the mission field 2.5 years, and I've got those bags sealed up and packed and ready to board the plane, and they changed mission presidents. And he says, well, I haven't used the celestial tongue for 35, 40 years, so President Fenn, would you just stay on another 3 months, would you, until I kind of get my feet on the ground and find out what this language is all about? Besides, everything was done in mail, and he says, that stack of mail there just frightens me. I can't even read it, much less dictate all the letters. So would you take my really attractive, and I say that advisedly because you all saw Sister Fenn, and he says, you just take her and close that office door, and you go dictate the letters to her. You're not going to really blame me for anything, are you? Anyway, my daughter has a picture of us standing in front of the mission home in Mexico City, and we both have our hands crossed behind our back. No, don't you anyone believe we're in love? Can't you see where our hands are? They're behind our back. Anyway, she makes fun of that dear picture, and she went to the BYU, and Hubie Brown, who later was in the first presidency, was her counselor, and so he's talking to her one day, and she says, yeah, I've thought about going on a mission. And he says, well, where have you thought you'd like to go? Well, I don't know, my full ancestors are from England. I've thought about that a lot. And he says, well, I was the president of the British mission, so if you ever decide you want to go there, you just let me know. Well, if anyone knew Sister Fenn well, you'd know that that's not ultimately going to be in her DNA to decide that she's going to change the Lord's directive here. And so she says, no, and her personal history, she says, oh, I'm so grateful. She says, it just makes me tremble that I wouldn't have met Boyd if I'd have gone. gone to the British Isles. Anyway, I like her word. Anyhow, we married and we moved to California, Southern California, had 7 children there, and in Della's 5th pregnancy, there was some baby was coming very premature, and the doctor had said to her, he said, Della, you put on a little extra weight. I suppose you could have twins, but I'll tell you this reason why I'm pretty sure you're not. But anyway, she's wide awake, and she hears that there's another baby. Oh, she is so excited now. She's going to have twins, and so she's in all of this is excitement, and they've got the incubators already and everything. But right during this excitement, why she hears the doctor that's assisting her doctor, he says, good hell, there's another one in here. Anyway, running a business and raising triplets and being bishop at the same time was awesome opportunity, I guess you might say. So 7 years as bishop and a couple of years in the stake presidency, we decided that we would move to our newly acquired 500-acre beautiful ranch in southern Utah and build our dream home. Well, that was 1978. And so, my, the worst snowstorm in 40 years. And I'm looking at a mound of snow out in front of my place, and this is not even January yet. And there's a round mound out in front, and I know that there's something making that mound. It was my son's car. That's how bad the snow was. And so I don't know why our kids had such a hard time getting to the school bus. And now my dear darling Hermana Fenn, she is in the Relief Society presidency, and they meet during the week. And so she thinks, well, shucks, the car is down, we hadn't even developed our roads from our house. It wasn't that far to the paved roads, but she'd left a car down there. So she saddles a horse and she puts on some pants underneath her skirt and gets on that good-looking horse and rides down there, and the snowplow is throwing up snow and she gets the car stuck. So she puts on the pants under her skirt again and puts the books in the saddle bag and swings onto her Arabian and rides it to church. They haven't got over that incident yet. They kill. Oh, you're the man that's wife who drove and I don't even know who they are. Now, in 1985, we're called as a couple to Spain. Yeah, to Spain. And the mission president in Valencia, he says, I want you to be my executive secretary and counselor, and my sister Fenn to work in the office. Well, it's not exactly what we were hoping for, and the type of missionary work, but we did our job, but 6 months down the line, President Valencia comes to me and he says, look, down in Alicante, a beautiful little city south of Valencia on the coast, there's a man down there that's branch president, and he's had so much contention in his branch that he's given up. He wants to be excommunicated with his wife and 7 children. All 9 want to be excommunicated. So he says, I'll ask you to go down as branch president, and if you can save that little family, your mission will be a success. So I talked to him, I beg him. Let's talk to him. I begged him for days. Please stay. I don't know who all these people are. I don't know where the contention is. Stay. You be the elders quorum president, and I'll be the branch president, and we will get to the bottom of this. Well, he finally relents, and the ones that we put on probation, it wasn't much of an issue at all, but there was a man who had been a district president. Now that's pretty close to a stake president, mind you, in the district. and also he'd been a counselor to a mission president. And in Spain, titles are everything, right? Remember that? Well, he had more titles than all the rest of the branch put together, I guess. And so he and his wife were really responsible for the bulk of the problem. And you think, well, what would ever cause this man to say that he wanted to be excommunicated? He's the branch president, has a darling little family. Well, my good friends, I had never seen, and I can't take the time to tell you and uncover what I did see, but I have never seen such dark, ugly, evil come forth through the means of the priesthood. Never. And so I'm sitting in the branch meeting, and I say to myself, I've been in sacrament meetings my whole life, ever since I was a little kid in primary, and I have never felt what I'm feeling right now. I must be sitting in a stupor. And I think the whole branch is sitting in a stupor. Well, it's kind of interesting. Remember how the Lord in the Old Testament, no, maybe in the New, but certainly in the Old Testament, he was always trying to convince the children of Israel to convert them that he was God. Remember those scriptures? I wanted to let them know that he was their God and that they should realize that there's God. Well, after the excommunication of the evil that was there and was totally cut out and carved out, and within 1 week, it could have been even 8 days, but within a week, a young, beautiful girl, missionary age, midweek, walks into the chapel, and she says, I've always been a big fan of the Osmonds. Could you tell me something about your church? Oh no, we don't have time for that. We have too much work, right? And so we didn't have virtually a referral in the whole Alicante district, but she's saying, could you tell me something about your church? So the missionary set her down, and if some of you remember Sister Lausadica, she was involved. She married Joe Wakefield. But anyways, they start teaching her, and she says, well, but you're only teaching me once a week. Can't you do it every day? They said, well, we're not too busy, I guess. So they teach her every day. Now listen to what I'm going to say to you, and try to appreciate what I'm trying to convey. In 30 days, Elena Scudero was her name, and Elena is wearing a black name tag. All my guests know what a black name tag is? What the missionaries wear, okay? Now Elena Scudero has got one on, and she's sleeping at night in the same apartment with Sister Lausadica. 30 days. The Lord says, I'll show you. Just get rid of the contention, and I'll show you who's God. And so the missionary work never went, never faltered from then on. And Alicante is now a stake. Good grief. A stake. Sister Valencia gets very ill in September of that year, and she goes to Salt Lake for her diagnosis. And in December of that same year, I'm asked to fly to Frankfurt and meet with President Monson, and President Nelson, who's over Europe, is there in the same room, and I'm called to be a mission president someplace in the world. Now, then the pattern, by the way, just any of you that are not privy to this, the temple presidents and the mission presidents, they're giving they're giving them some time because maybe they've got family and businesses and things to try to get ready so they can be gone for 3 years. So they say, we'll let you know. You can go home. And it was December, mind you, and the changing of the guards was in July. So I had I had 6 months that I could go home and get ready. But I said, well, I'm going to go back to Alicante for a few months, and then I'll go home. I'll wrap things up and I'll go home. I'd grown pretty close to that little branch by that time, and after all, I'd been their branch president for a year, or 9 to a year. So I go home after meeting with President Monson, and I go home, and 1 week, 1 week after that, I get a call from President Valencia, and he says, I've got to go to Salt Lake. My wife is very ill. I'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks, and the brethren wants you to take care of the mission while I'm gone. Bye. Incidentally, in the morning, you're presiding over a zone conference at 9 o'clock. Good night. Anyway, Sister Valencia's illness turned out to be pancreatic cancer, and it was pretty obvious pretty quick that they were not returning. And after I don't know how many months exactly, the brethren could kind of see the handwriting on the wall, and they said, well, I guess we'll have to try to make do with what we've got. And so they called me to be the mission president in Barcelona. But then we have to fly to Provo to our training. We hadn't gone our training, so Sister Fenn and I do that, and incidentally, you guessed it. It's kind of amazing because the mission presidents are trained basically by the Quorum of the 12. And so in the process of bumping shoulders with these wonderful men, I run into Elder Oaks, and he says, oh, President Fenn there, I see you've been called to the Barcelona Mission. Congratulations. We had you slotted for Argentina. And this bears the little comment. My closest friend, who Randall Taylor grew up with, knowing so well, my closest friend, Waldo Call, was the area president in Argentina at the time. So you factor that in by yourself. Now, if there's anyone in this room that I'm going to offend, I'll just make this comment that nothing will be made in reference to any of you specifically, but when Sister Fenn and I got into things, there was something really strange going on in our mission. And we couldn't hardly get a feeling or a handle on it, but it was kind of more like a game that was being played, and seemed like it was kind of fun. You ever seen kids any of your kids that you have fun at home, and they're just kind of fun because they're being just a little disobedient and they're liking it or something? Anyway, this seemed to be the pattern, and it wasn't mission-wide by any means either. But, well, the news comes down to Sister Fenn and I that the mission car had been driven to France. Oh, that's a big move. And that they were playing face cards in the mission president's office while he's gone.
We thought it was a Peugeot. It wasn't me.
That was one of them, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, then surprise, they had figured out that this is how interesting the little game had got. They decided they would make a code and put it in the mission letter so that those that they wanted to know about what the car going to France or their other things would know, but the rest wouldn't know. What fun little game was this?
Secret combination.
Anyhow, the big watchword was from then on was this Sister Fenn, and I think that we, in a loving way, appeal to the better side of our missionaries, and we said, hey, these are people's lives that we're dealing with out there, and this can have ramifications that will be amazing, because their children will baptize, and this thing will go on and on. And my dear nephew, who looks after me dang good, who's from Argentina, he told you a story, I think, when the last time we got together, while he had baptized some twins while he was on his mission, and that they had both become doctors, moved to the U.S., and that they could account for 10,000 people who had been baptized just because of the two of them. Now, that was several years ago, and I can extrapolate that, meaning that it's not 10,000 now. It's a lot more thousands than that. And so the missionaries changed, and they changed quickly. And then the missions, the norm had been 25 a month for years. And now it had doubled to 50. And now it had doubled to 75, tripled to 75.
Rounding up.
And the month I left, or the year I left in 88, they baptized 80. So I don't know what happened after that, but just think about that, brothers and sisters. There's a little man, some of you raise your hand, that tells me if, this is just something I'm curious about. How many of you know who Paul Harvey is?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Oh, a lot more than I thought.
The rest of the story.
A lot more than I thought, because I thought it was a lot before my time. But he always, besides giving news in a very clever little way, he wasn't a Rush Limbaugh type that it was political. No, it was just very interesting news, and he did a good job of it. But he lived in a little remote town of northern Arizona. And that's where he had his little radio station. And he used to say he'd find out things that had happened after the news had taken place, and there's other things added on. And he would say, and then he'd tell you about it. It was really interesting to hear the other part of it. And he'd say, now you know the rest of the story. I can just hear that little voice of his, now you know the rest of the story. Well, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 little rest of the stories real quick. About 5 years ago, something like that, I get a call from Elder so-and-so, who probably was more responsible for the little program that I just described to you than anyone else. And he says, President Fenn, he says, I've been stewing over this for decades. And he says, I just want to apologize to you profusely. I feel so bad. I've repented 100 times for this. And he says, but I hadn't got back to you. And he says, I wanted to apologize to you. And he says, I know where your place is too. And he says, could I stop by sometime and visit with you? And I told him, I said, man, that would be the nicest thing I could ever think of. But he hasn't come. That's the only part I don't like. He hasn't come. But then here's another part of a story. I opened up a letter, and this was maybe more like 10 years ago. And this little family standing in front of the Swiss temple. How many of them was there? 9? Remember the 9 that wanted to be excommunicated? This is the 9. And President Sebastian just knew. He knew how important this would be to me. That he'd got his kids sealed to him, and that they were all safe under the tent of Zion. I love that picture. Anyway, now I'm going to tell you the weirdest thing in the world. Is there enough time, Gerald? Am I going to? Is the ceiling going to fall in or anything? One last little thing. Del and I did something that we do not understand any way, shape, or form. But when we come back from Spain, we said, well, we love our dream home. We just love New Harmony. It's so exciting. But we don't want to come back. Now, don't try to get me to explain it. I tell you I can't. So we said, well, I guess we'll have to go back to California where our business is. Well, that didn't work out because we couldn't find any good horse property, and we're really big into the horses flesh now. And so we were traveling back and forth to our ranch and to our business, and we see that the Vegas temple is just about to be dedicated. This is halfway in between our business and our ranch, isn't it? And we wouldn't really like to live in Vegas, but now that there's a temple there, maybe we'd give in. So we buy a house, and dear friends, I could walk out the back door and look up, and there was Angel Moroni. That's how close our house was to the temple. So we run into the stake president, and he was a kind of a President Kimball type, just a spiritual giant of a man, and so lovable. And he says, well, what in the world ever possessed you to leave your beloved ranch and your horses and everything? Well, we don't know. We kind of look at each other like, you know, she can't give me any more answer than I can. And he says, well, I know why you moved here. He says, I prayed you here. Now, here again, there's a contention is so bad in his ward that those on this side, he can't call the bishop because he won't get along with those on those sides. He can't call this thing over here because they won't get along on this. What is this, my calling in life, brother? The contention place? Anyway, it worked out so very nice. It's one of the nicest wards that you'd ever find in the world. Lovely, good people. Dylan enjoyed it very much. And then I'm walking around one day and I get a phone call, and the phone says, is this Boyd Fenn? And I said, yeah. This is Boyd Fenn from Barcelona, Spain. Oh, don't you know you're in trouble when they say things like that? And yeah. This is Elder Lassiter. Well, Elder Lassiter was my contact, and I don't know if you remember him in the area office, but just a dynamite man. He'd been a colonel in the Air Force, and man, he commanded, results. And so he says, the brethren want to know if you'll be the MTC president in Guatemala. Okay.
Did you have contention down there?
Just back real quickly, no going back. We're gonna have to cut and print.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. I'll love you to the day I die, and that may not be long.
President Fenn, didn't you used to have us quote Doctrina y Convenios Quattro all the time?
Yeah.
Can anybody recite it? I'll give
whole
you.
thing?
Oh, I think we all have to.
I think we ought to all do it together. I gotta pull it up on my phone. I'll give everybody 30 seconds to do it. Why don't you lead us in that?
I can.
Hey, key.
Okay, you get us going.
One, two, three. He aquí. Una obra maravillosa está para aparecer entre los hijos de los hombres. Por lo tanto, oh vosotros que os embarcáis en el servicio del Señor, que os sirváis con todo vuestro corazón, alma, mente y fuerza, para que aparezcáis sin culpa ante Dios en el último día. Deseos de servir a Dios, sois llamados a la obra.
Con su fuerza, atesoro para sí,
de modo que no perece, sino que trae salvación a su alma, y fe,
Esperanza, caridad y amor.
con
La
la
única manera
de glorificar a
Dios.
en la gloria de Dios, lo califican para la obra.
Tened presente la fe, la virtud,
El conocimiento,
la
la templanza, la
paciencia, la bondad fraternal, piedad, caridad, humildad, diligencia. Pedid y recibiréis. Llamad y se os abrirá. Amén.
Gee, I didn't notice the long one.